Yeah, hi, it's Mark from An American in Russia. You know, when I lived in the States, I guess I lived kind of a low key life, maybe. I don't know. I had a lot of friends. I met these friends through work, through hobbies I like to do, through other social circumstances. But I can honestly say that I didn't have any friends that I met because they saw me on television. Well, that was all to change when I came to Russia. Let me tell you the story about that. Russia, then and now. When I first came to Russia and started to work here, Americans were a real rarity. Well, in the provinces, anyhow. I was living in Chelyabinsk, which had been a closed city until about the mid 1990s. This meant that foreigners were not even allowed there. So, for many that I came in contact with, I was the first American that they had ever met. This actually put pressure on me in some ways. I mean, many people's impressions of Americans might be based on their experience that they had with me. So I learned to be a diplomat. So Americans were pretty rare where I was, and as for British people, well, most Russians thought that British and Americans were about the same anyhow. This perhaps faulty logic landed me a job in television. Well, not exactly television, but the world of commercials, specifically beer commercials. Or make that singular, beer commercial. For those not familiar with the geography of the Chelyabinsk region, the country of Kazakhstan is only a couple of hours from the city. A rather large advertising agency located in Chelyabinsk did a lot of work with Kazakh companies. One of these companies was a British-owned beer company called Carl Balling Beer. Well, they're a brewery there, actually. Well, the Carl Balling Beer Company wanted to have a nice holiday message made with the president of Carl Balling, wishing the people of Kazakhstan a Happy New Year's. But I guess the president of the company was pretty busy. It was the holiday season, so the advertising agency decided to find a British or American man, to them, same difference, to star in their commercial. Now, it was a very small pool of possible candidates, and fortunately, I won that beauty contest. I had never made a television commercial before, but what the hell? I managed to move to Russia. I guess I could handle a 30-second TV ad. Now, I'll be showing you the commercial. I mean, back then they gave me a CD copy, and they were also taking some photos of the process that day, although the photos were blurry. But I can assure you that that young, handsome man with jet black hair and slim build was actually me about 22 years ago. And actually, what I did is I ran the video and I ran the photos through an artificial intelligent program to try to bring back the focus a little bit. And it did a pretty good job. I'm going to use those, but it doesn't change. I mean, it's not like putting my head on somebody else's body or anything like that. It's the real deal. The day of the commercial shoot, I met with a couple of people from the agency and we did a little shopping. They rented a nice suit, tie, and even glasses. So we first did some shopping, then headed off to a furniture store. That's where the commercial would be shot. And first I was thinking about it, but really, when you think about this, a nice furniture store, it's like a beautiful, perfect movie studio. It's full of different sets. We're there to use a very nice set befitting the president of a brewery. First came makeup. They had a makeup girl who had all kinds of crazy looking makeup tools and a lot of other stuff with her. Unlike the young males of today, I suppose, it was my first time having makeup applied. And I wasn't comfortable with this. I mean, I was brought up to know that men don't wear makeup. Well, this man had to wear it that day. It felt bad. I wanted to itch my face. And to the unaided eye, it did not look natural at all. But I was told that to the cameras, it would look great. Now, as they were setting up the lights and sound equipment, I was given the script and told to memorize it. I looked at the script and I knew I couldn't possibly memorize it. It was obvious it was not written by a native English speaker, and it read like it was directly from Google Translate. And I don't mean 2024 Google Translate, I mean early 2000s Google Translate. I asked them if I could rewrite the script. I would capture the same meaning that was in their script, but do it in a style more comfortable for a native speaker. They were nice and great to work with. They agreed and were happy to have me do this, so I rewrote the script. Now it was time for me to explain to them that my memory is not that good, and although the typical Russian is expected to and does memorize page after page of Pushkin's prose, I'm an American, and we're not suited for this. Memorizing my children's names is hard for me. The director then explained how this works and how I would be able to do it, which I could, and I did. He explained that during the 30 seconds of the commercial that they would change camera angles like 3 times. Therefore, I would only have to memorize 1/3 of the script at a time, which I felt was a much more manageable task. Now, it took several attempts, or takes. I would stumble over a word, perhaps, or someone would smile and I would start laughing. But before too long, we had all of the filming done. Oh, wait. Forgot. At the end, I was to say, Happy New Year's in Russian, and end with a smile at the camera. So I did this. Director said, well, wait a minute, let's do that again. And I said, I think that my pronunciation was pretty good. What did you want done differently? And he said, that's the problem. You're supposed to be an Englishman speaking in Russian. You need to sound less good. So I did it in a bad manner, and the director loved it. We were done. And that little Happy New Year's thing became the defining moment of the commercial from where I sat. All the commercial was dubbed in Russian, except when I said Snovim Godom, or Happy New Year's in Russian.
Добрый день, я президент корпорации Карл Баллинг Ричард Ллойд, и мне хочется от всей души поздравить с Новым годом всех жителей вашей прекрасной страны и поклонников пива Карл Баллинг, которое уже год мы успешно продаем в Казахстане. Высокое качество нашего пива напрямую связано с вековыми традициями. Пиво Карл Баллинг производится уже 160 лет и является международной торговой маркой. Поэтому в наступающем году нам очень важно, а главное приятно продолжать сотрудничество с Казахстаном.
Snovim Godom. Well, I sent links to all of my family and friends in America. And do you know, the next time I came to America, and I visited many of them, at least 4 of them greeted me with Snovim Godom. A star was born. Now, my family thought it was pretty cool. I mean, how many of their friends had a father making Kazakh beer commercials in Russia? I mean, beer. Perfect. It could have been socks, I suppose, and not so cool. For about 3 hours of my time, I was paid 6,000 rubles in cash, which is about, back then, $200. Now, it's not a king's ransom, but that was equal at the time to a month's salary for many people. Okay, well, back to the shoot again. After the shoot was complete and I had scraped the makeup off my face, I left. But I had just done something new and interesting. Something I actually enjoyed it. It was nice to learn all about how this was done. I was already on the bus, going home, when I recalled a promise of some Carl Ball beer. They said, before you leave, we'll give you some Carl Ball beer to bring home. Well, I never got mine. Oh well. The beer would have been a nice souvenir, but the memories, they were pretty cool. At least 7 years after I made that beer commercial that was shown in Kazakhstan, I still had people who would ask me about it. Let me explain. I had friends in Chelyabinsk who lived in Kazakhstan, or their families were from Kazakhstan. They would go home around Christmas, New Year's, for the holidays, and while there they would see that same commercial still on television 7 years later. When they returned, they would ask me about it and ask me if it was me, which of course I said yes. So it was a cool experience. Go Joe Hollywood. Well, that's it for today. Until my next video, пока.